3 months had passed since Earth signed the treaty with the Galactic Council. Jake Morrison found himself aboard Harmony Nexus, the Council's massive space station that served as their capital. The structure was so large it had its own artificial gravity and weather systems, with different sections designed for various alien species. Jake had been selected to represent humanity during what the aliens called integration training. He wasn't alone in this task. Dr. Amy Sullivan, a brilliant physicist from Stanford, had joined him along with Commander Ryan Kelly, a strategic analyst from the Pentagon who specialized in understanding complex political systems. The training facility was located in the station's diplomatic quarter, where junior member species learned about council procedures and protocols. Jake quickly noticed that all the other students were from species that had joined the council within the last 100 years. There were no senior member species in their classes. Their instructor was a tall, gray-skinned alien named Facilitator Krental, who had been teaching integration courses for over 3 decades. Krental spoke in a monotone voice and seemed to view the training as a routine task rather than an important educational opportunity. Today we will learn about resource allocation protocols, Krental announced to the mixed group of alien students. Junior member species are expected to contribute materials and labor according to council directives. Questions regarding these directives should be submitted through proper channels and will be reviewed by senior member committees. Dr. Sullivan raised her hand. What happens if a junior member species has concerns about a particular directive? Krental's large eyes blinked slowly. Concerns are noted in official records. Senior members consider all feedback when making future decisions. But do junior members have any actual say in the decision-making process? Jake asked. Junior members participate in the democratic process through their limited voting privileges, Krental replied. Your votes are counted and recorded along with all others. After class, Jake and his team walked through the station's main corridor, observing daily life on Harmony Nexus. What they saw troubled them. Beings from junior member species worked in service positions throughout the station, cleaning floors, maintaining equipment, and serving food in restaurants. Meanwhile, senior member species occupied all the management and leadership roles. Commander Kelly had been quietly documenting these observations in his reports back to Earth. It's like a caste system, he told Jake and Amy as they sat in their assigned quarters. The senior species make all the decisions and everyone else just follows orders. Dr. Sullivan had been analyzing the technical specifications the council had shared with humanity. The technology they've given us is impressive, but it's all basic stuff, she said. Meanwhile, I've seen senior species using devices that are centuries ahead of what they're sharing with us. Jake decided to explore the station more thoroughly. During his free time, he visited different sections and tried to talk with beings from various species. Most junior member representatives were polite, but seemed reluctant to speak openly about their experiences with the council. One evening, Jake met a being called Vextar, from a species that had joined the council 50 years earlier. Vextar had insect-like features and spoke in clicking sounds that were translated by a small device. They were sitting alone in a quiet section of the station's recreation area. Your species is new to the council, Vextar said when Jake approached. You still have hope in your eyes. Jake sat down nearby. What do you mean? Vextar's antennae twitched nervously. When my people joined, we believed we would become equals. We thought the probationary period was temporary. Wasn't it? Jake asked. My species has been junior members for 50 years. We are told we need more time to prove ourselves. Meanwhile, we send our resources and our people to work on council projects across the galaxy. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Has any species ever graduated from junior status? Vextar was quiet for a long moment. Not in my lifetime. There are always new requirements, new tests to pass, new ways we need to prove our worth. That conversation stayed with Jake as he continued his training. He began paying closer attention to the power dynamics within the council structure. The senior member species had formed what appeared to be an exclusive club, making all important decisions among themselves, while using junior members as a labor force. Dr. Sullivan had been conducting her own research into the council's history. She had accessed the station's public database and discovered disturbing patterns. Jake, you need to see this, she said one day, showing him data on her portable device. I've been tracking resource flows over the past 2 centuries. The data showed that junior member species consistently contributed far more resources than they received back from the Council. Meanwhile, senior species controlled all the advanced technology and received the majority of benefits from Galactic Trade. Commander Kelly had been studying the Council's political structure and had reached similar conclusions. It's designed to maintain permanent inequality, he explained to his teammates. The senior species have created a system that ensures they always stay on top. 2 weeks into their stay, the Council announced a special opportunity for humanity. Commander Zephyrian called Jake to a private meeting in the diplomatic offices. Your species has impressed the Council with your quick learning and adaptability, Zephyrian said. We have decided to offer you a chance to prove your worth through a traditional trial. Jake kept his expression neutral. What kind of trial? There is a situation on the mining world of Kepler 442b that requires resolution. The automated mining systems have malfunctioned, trapping thousands of workers underground. Several Council teams have attempted to resolve the crisis, but none have succeeded. Zephyrian activated a holographic display showing the mining world. If humanity can solve this problem, it will demonstrate your species' value to the galactic community. Success would accelerate your integration process significantly. Jake studied the display, noting the complex underground tunnel systems and the apparent scope of the disaster. What exactly happened to the mining systems? Technical malfunction of unknown origin. The system simply stopped functioning correctly, causing tunnel collapses and trapping workers in various locations throughout the facility. How long have the workers been trapped? Approximately 6 months. The situation is quite urgent. After the meeting, Jake returned to his quarters and immediately contacted his team. As they reviewed the information about Kepler 442b, several things didn't make sense. 6 months is a long time for a rescue operation, Dr. Sullivan observed. Why haven't they been able to get the workers out by now? Commander Kelly frowned as he studied the technical data. These mining systems are supposedly automated, but the failure patterns look almost deliberate. Equipment doesn't usually fail in such a coordinated way. Jake had been thinking about his conversation with Vextar and the patterns they had observed on the station. What if this isn't really about proving our worth? He said slowly. What if it's designed to fail? Dr. Sullivan looked up from her analysis. You think they're setting us up? Think about it, Jake continued. They give junior species impossible tasks, and when those species fail, it justifies keeping them in subordinate positions permanently. Commander Kelly nodded grimly. It would be a perfect system for maintaining control. Create problems that can't be solved, then blame the junior species for their inability to solve them. As Jake prepared for the mission to Kepler 442b, he realized that humanity was facing more than just a rescue operation. They were walking into a test that might be designed to ensure their failure, thereby justifying their permanent status as second-class members of the galactic community. But Jake had an advantage that the Council might not have considered. Humans had a history of approaching problems in unconventional ways, and they weren't afraid to challenge systems that seemed unfair. As he assembled his team for the mission, Jake began to wonder if the Galactic Council was about to learn something unexpected about human nature. The transport ship carrying Jake and his team approached Kepler 442b through a field of metallic debris that orbited the planet like a broken ring. Jake looked out through the viewport at the mining world below, its surface scarred by massive excavation sites that looked like wounds in the planet's crust. He had assembled a small but skilled team for this mission. Dr. Amy Sullivan would handle the technical analysis of the malfunctioning systems. Chief Engineer Paul Martinez, a former submarine specialist, would deal with the mechanical aspects of the rescue. Sergeant Kate Thompson, who had served with special forces in underwater cave rescues, would provide tactical support and coordinate the actual extraction operations. The Council had provided them with a basic briefing and standard rescue equipment, but Jake had insisted on bringing additional tools from Earth. He had a feeling they would need every advantage they could get. As their ship descended toward the main mining facility, Paul Martinez studied the structural readings on his scanner. The underground complex is massive, he reported. Tunnels extend for hundreds of kilometers in all directions, going down at least 3,000 meters. Dr. Sullivan was analyzing the technical specifications of the mining equipment. These systems are incredibly sophisticated, she said. They're designed with multiple backup protocols and safety measures. For everything to fail simultaneously would require either extraordinary bad luck or deliberate sabotage. Sergeant Thompson was reviewing the rescue operation reports from previous council teams. "I've been reading about the other attempts," she said. "Every team followed the same basic approach, trying to restart the mining systems and clear the tunnels from the main access points." Jake nodded. "And every team failed in exactly the same way. The systems would appear to restart but then fail again within hours, often causing additional collapses. The mining facility's control center was located on the surface, housed in a cluster of buildings that had been abandoned when the crisis began. As the human team explored the facility, they found evidence of hasty evacuation. Personal belongings were scattered around workstations, and several meals had been left half-finished in the cafeteria. Dr. Sullivan immediately went to work on the main computer systems, while Paul Martinez began examining the mechanical equipment. Jake and Kate Thompson reviewed the emergency logs and communication records from the day the crisis began. "Amy, come look at this," Jake called from the communication center. "The emergency reports don't match what we were told." Dr. Sullivan joined him at the communication console. As she read through the logs, her expression grew increasingly concerned. These reports described deliberate system shutdowns, not random failures. Someone was systematically disabling safety protocols. Paul Martinez had discovered something equally disturbing in the mechanical systems. "The mining equipment down there isn't broken," he announced. "It's been reprogrammed. Someone changed the operating parameters to cause deliberate tunnel collapses." Sergeant Thompson had been studying the facility's security recordings. "I found video footage from the day this started," she said, activating a large display screen. "Watch this." The security footage showed alien technicians working on the mining control systems. They moved efficiently and purposefully, accessing various computer terminals and making systematic changes to the programming. These weren't emergency repairs. They were deliberate modifications. "Can you identify which species these technicians belong to?" Jake asked. Kate Thompson enhanced the image quality and zoomed in on the aliens' uniforms. The insignia clearly marked them as members of the Draconian hegemony, one of the senior council species. Dr. Sullivan had been running deeper analysis on the computer systems. "I've found the original programming," she announced. "The mining systems were functioning perfectly until 6 months ago, when someone installed new code that gradually destabilized the entire operation." Jake stared at the evidence accumulating before them. This wasn't an accident or equipment failure. The senior council species deliberately sabotaged this facility. "But why?" Paul Martinez asked. "Why would they want to trap their own workers?" Jake thought about the patterns he had observed on Harmony Nexus and his conversation with Vexstar. "Because it gives them an excuse to maintain control. They create problems, then blame junior species for not being able to solve them." The team spent the next several hours developing a plan. Simply rescuing the trapped workers wouldn't be enough. They needed to gather evidence of the sabotage and find a way to expose the truth. Dr. Sullivan worked on creating a complete record of the original programming and the modifications that had been made. Paul Martinez developed a method for safely restarting the mining systems without triggering additional collapses. Sergeant Thompson planned the actual rescue operation, mapping out the safest routes to reach the trapped workers. Jake coordinated with the surface, using the facility's communication systems to contact the workers who were still alive underground. Many had been surviving in emergency shelters, rationing food and water while hoping for rescue. "We're coming to get you," Jake told them over the communication system. "Stay in your shelters and wait for our signal." The rescue operation began at dawn the next day. Dr. Sullivan had successfully restored the original programming to the mining systems, but she had also installed hidden recording devices that would document any future sabotage attempts. Paul Martinez led teams into the tunnels, using Earth-designed cutting tools to clear blocked passages and create new escape routes. Sergeant Thompson coordinated the extraction of workers from the deepest sections of the mine. Her experience with underwater cave rescues proved invaluable in navigating the complex tunnel systems and safely moving injured workers to the surface. As the rescue operation progressed, Jake maintained communication with both his team and the Galactic Council. He reported their progress honestly, but he didn't mention the evidence of sabotage they had discovered. By the end of the second day, They had successfully rescued over 2,000 workers from various species who had been trapped in the mines. The mining systems were now functioning normally, and production could resume within days. But Jake knew the real work was just beginning. The evidence they had gathered proved that the Galactic Council's senior species had been deliberately creating crises to maintain their power over junior members. This went far beyond the mining facility on Kepler 442b. It suggested a pattern of manipulation that might extend across the entire galaxy. Dr. Sullivan had copied all the sabotage evidence onto secure storage devices that were hidden among their equipment. Paul Martinez had documented the technical aspects of how the sabotage had been carried out. Sergeant Thompson had recorded video testimony from several rescued workers who had witnessed suspicious activities before the crisis began. As they prepared to return to Harmony Nexus, Jake realized that humanity was about to face a choice. They could report their success in solving the mining crisis and accept their place as junior members of the Council, or they could expose the truth about the corruption and conspiracy they had discovered. Jake knew that revealing the evidence would make powerful enemies among the senior Council species. But he also knew that staying silent would mean accepting a system built on lies and oppression. As their transport ship lifted off from Kepler 442b, carrying the rescued workers back to safety, Jake made his decision. Humanity hadn't traveled to the stars to become servants to corrupt alien empires. They had come to explore, to learn, and to build a better future for all intelligent species. The Galactic Council was about to learn that humans didn't back down from bullies, even when those bullies controlled advanced technology and claimed to represent galactic civilization. Jake smiled grimly as he watched the mining world disappear below them. The real challenge was just beginning. The main assembly chamber of Harmony Nexus had never hosted such a controversial session. Representatives from all 12 senior council species sat in their elevated positions, while junior member delegates filled the lower sections of the amphitheater. Jake Morrison stood at the central podium, holding a datapad that contained enough evidence to shake the foundation of galactic civilization. 3 days had passed since the human team returned from Kepler 442b. Jake had requested an emergency session of the full council to present his findings about the mining crisis. The senior species had agreed, expecting a routine report about a successful rescue operation. Commander Zephyrian opened the session with formal remarks about humanity's achievement. The humans have successfully resolved the crisis on Kepler 442b, demonstrating their potential value to the galactic community, he announced to the assembly. Jake activated his presentation system, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber. Instead of showing images of the rescue operation, the displays showed technical readouts and computer code. "Thank you, Commander Zephyrian," Jake began. "We did indeed resolve the crisis on Kepler 442b. However, what we discovered there goes far beyond a simple equipment malfunction. The first holographic display showed the original mining system programming alongside the modified code that had caused the disasters. Even delegates who weren't technical experts could see the stark differences between the two versions. The mining systems on Kepler 442b did not malfunction," Jake continued. "They were deliberately sabotaged by technicians from the Draconian hegemony, working under direct orders from senior council leadership." A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the chamber. The Draconian representative, a large reptilian being named High Counselor Vexthul, rose from his seat. "This is an outrageous accusation," Vexthul declared. "The human speaks lies to avoid admitting their species' limitations." Jake remained calm as he activated the next part of his presentation. Security footage from Kepler 442b appeared on the displays, clearly showing Draconian technicians systematically modifying the mining equipment. "The evidence speaks for itself," Jake said. "We have video recordings, computer logs, and testimony from witnesses who observed the sabotage operation." Dr. Amy Sullivan had joined Jake at the podium, and she began explaining the technical details of how the sabotage had been carried out. Her presentation was precise and methodical, showing exactly how the original safety protocols had been disabled and replaced with code designed to cause catastrophic failures. As the evidence mounted, Jake noticed that junior member delegates were becoming increasingly agitated. Many were whispering among themselves and looking accusingly at the senior species representatives. a delegate from the Centauri Alliance. A humanoid species with pale blue skin stood up in the junior member section. If this is true, then how many other crises have been artificially created? He demanded. Jake activated another display showing data that Dr. Sullivan had compiled during their investigation. We analyzed reports from similar incidents across the galaxy over the past century. The pattern is clear and consistent. Senior council species create problems, junior species are assigned to solve them, and when those species fail, it's used as justification for maintaining their subordinate status. The chamber erupted in chaos as junior member delegates began shouting questions and demands. Many had experienced similar trials that had mysteriously resulted in failure despite their best efforts. High Counselor Vexthul and the other senior species representatives huddled together in urgent conversation. After several minutes, the crystal-like representative of the ethereal collective rose to address the assembly. Even if these allegations were true, the ethereal declared, they would represent decisions made for the greater good of galactic stability. Junior species require guidance and structure to prevent chaos and conflict. Jake had expected this response. You call it guidance and structure. The rest of the galaxy calls it oppression and exploitation. Commander Zephyrian activated the chamber's authority protocols, causing a deep tone to echo through the room. The humans' accusations are serious but unsubstantiated. This council will conduct a proper investigation through established channels. With respect. Commander, Jake replied. The established channels are controlled by the same species accused of corruption. We're not asking for an investigation, we're providing proof of crimes against the galactic community. Paul Martinez had been monitoring communication channels and noticed that news of the assembly session was spreading rapidly across the galaxy. Junior member worlds were receiving reports about the evidence being presented, and many were beginning to demand answers from their own governments. Sergeant Kate Thompson, positioned near the chamber's communication center, signaled to Jake that everything was proceeding according to their plan. While the formal presentation continued, the evidence was being broadcast to junior member species across hundreds of worlds. The Draconian High Counselor stood again, his massive form intimidating even from a distance. The humans have proven themselves to be a dangerous influence on galactic stability. Their wild accusations and conspiracy theories threaten the peace that this council has maintained for millennia. Jake smiled slightly. The peace you're talking about has been maintained by keeping other species in positions of servitude. That's not peace, that's control through oppression. A new voice joined the debate as Keithavar, the Centauri delegate, rose to support Jake's position. The humans have provided more evidence in one presentation than the Council has shared with junior members in 50 years. We demand immediate access to all records regarding previous incidents. The senior species representatives were clearly losing control of the situation. They had not expected such a coordinated challenge to their authority, and they certainly hadn't anticipated that the evidence would be so comprehensive and damaging. High Counselor Vexthul made one final attempt to regain control. The Galactic Council votes to expel the human species from our territory immediately. Their presence has proven to be a destabilizing influence that threatens the foundation of our civilization. The vote was predictably split along species lines, with all senior members supporting expulsion and all junior members opposing it. However, the Council's charter required a two-thirds majority for such drastic action, and the senior species fell short of that threshold. As the formal session descended into further chaos, Jake received a signal from Dr. Lisa Carter back on Earth. The communication array she had been preparing was now ready for activation. Jake raised his hand for attention, and the chamber gradually became quiet. Before this council makes any final decisions about humanity's future, you should know that this entire session has been broadcast live across the galaxy. Every junior member world has seen the evidence we've presented here today. The revelation hit the senior species like a physical blow. They had been so focused on controlling the immediate situation that they had forgotten about the broader implications of exposure. Commander Zephyrian's voice was barely controlled as he spoke. The humans have committed an act of galactic sedition by broadcasting council proceedings without authorization. We broadcast the truth, Jake replied simply. And the truth is that your council has been built on lies, manipulation, and exploitation. That ends today. As if to emphasize his point, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Junior member worlds were demanding answers from their governments about previous failed trials and suspicious incidents. Some were even beginning to question their continued participation in the council system. The senior species representatives huddled together for an emergency consultation, clearly recognizing that their carefully maintained system of control was crumbling around them. The exposure of their corruption had triggered exactly the kind of widespread resistance they had worked so hard to prevent. Jake looked out at the assembly, seeing fear in the eyes of the senior species and hope in the faces of the junior member delegates. The galaxy was changing, and there would be no going back to the old system of oppression and lies. The real question now was whether the senior species would accept this change peacefully or attempt to maintain their power through force. Jake suspected he already knew the answer to that question. Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of the International Space Station, watching the massive alien ship approach Earth. The vessel was 3 times larger than anything humans had ever built, its surface covered in strange glowing patterns that shifted like living things. Jake had been a Navy pilot for 8 years before joining the newly formed Space Defense Force, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The alien ship had appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 days ago. World leaders had spent those 3 days in emergency meetings, trying to decide how to respond. The aliens had sent a simple message in perfect English, asking for a peaceful meeting to discuss Earth joining something called the Galactic Council. Jake adjusted his uniform and checked his communication device one more time. He had been chosen to represent humanity in this first contact, along with Dr. Lisa Carter, a language expert from MIT, and Captain Ben Rodriguez, who led the new Interstellar Relations Division. The 3 of them would board the alien ship in 2 hours. Dr. Carter floated over to Jake, her face showing both excitement and worry. She had spent the last 3 days studying the alien message, trying to understand their language patterns. "Their communication style is very formal," she said. "They seem to view this as a business meeting rather than a historic moment." Captain Rodriguez joined them at the window. He was older than Jake, with gray hair and serious eyes that had seen many military operations. "I've been reading the intelligence reports," he said quietly. "Satellite data shows their ship has weapons we can't even understand. We need to be very careful about what we agree to." The alien ship moved closer to Earth, and Jake could see smaller ships leaving its main hull. One of them was heading toward the space station. Jake felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his face calm. This was the most important day in human history, and he couldn't afford to make mistakes. The docking process was smooth and silent. The alien ship attached to the station without any vibration or noise. Jake and his team moved to the docking bay, where they waited for the airlock to open. When it did, 3 figures in environmental suits stepped through. The aliens were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They moved gracefully like dancers, and their suits seemed to be made of a material that changed color as they walked. The leader stepped forward and spoke through a translation device. "I am Commander Zephyrian of the Altari Empire," the alien said. "We welcome Earth to the galactic community. Please come aboard our vessel so we can begin discussions." Jake stepped forward and introduced himself and his team. Commander Zephyrian nodded politely and gestured for them to follow. As they walked through the alien ship, Jake noticed that everything was designed for beings much taller than humans. The corridors were high and wide, and the lighting was softer than what humans preferred. They entered a large meeting room where 8 other aliens waited. Each one looked different from the others, representing various species from across the galaxy. Some had fur, others had scales, and one seemed to be made of living crystal. They all sat around a curved table that looked like it had grown from the floor rather than being built. Commander Zephyrian gestured for the humans to sit in chairs that had been specially prepared for their size. "These are representatives from the Galactic Council," he explained. "We have been watching your species for many years, and we believe you are ready to join our community." Dr. Carter leaned forward slightly. "What exactly does joining the Galactic Council involve?" she asked. A reptilian alien with green scales spoke up. "Your species will become junior members of the Council. This means you will have limited voting rights and access to basic galactic technologies. You will be expected to contribute resources and follow Council regulations." Captain Rodriguez frowned. "What kind of resources are we talking about?" "Raw materials primarily," Commander Zephyrian replied. "Earth has many minerals that are valuable for galactic trade. You will also be expected to provide workers for various council projects throughout the galaxy. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. This didn't sound like the partnership he had expected. And what do we get in return? He asked. Protection from hostile species, access to basic space travel technology, and the honor of being part of the galactic community, the crystal alien said, its voice ringing like bells. Many species would consider this a great privilege. The meeting continued for several hours. The aliens explained that Earth would need to undergo a probationary period of 50 years before achieving full membership. During this time, humans would need to prove their worth through various trials and demonstrations of loyalty to the Council. As Jake listened, he began to notice patterns in what the aliens were saying. They spoke about other junior member species in ways that suggested these species were not truly equal partners. The senior council members seemed to view newer species as resources to be managed, rather than allies to be respected. Dr. Carter asked detailed questions about the council's structure and history. The aliens answered politely but vaguely, often redirecting the conversation back to Earth's obligations, rather than explaining how the system actually worked. When the meeting ended, Commander Zephyrian offered to give the humans a tour of the ship. As they walked through various sections, Jake saw alien workers from different species performing manual labor, while beings that looked like senior council members supervised them. The workers kept their eyes down and spoke only when spoken to. Back in the docking bay, Commander Zephyrian handed Jake a data pad containing the formal treaty documents. "Take your time to review these," he said. "We understand this is a significant decision for your species. We will remain in orbit for 1 week to allow your leaders to consider our offer." As the humans returned to the space station, none of them spoke immediately. Finally, Dr. Carter broke the silence. "Did anyone else notice how they talked about the other species?" Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. It sounded more like they were describing employees than partners. Jake stared out at the alien ship, now holding position near the moon. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on exactly what. The aliens seemed friendly enough, and their offer of advanced technology was tempting. But the way they had presented everything made it sound like humanity would be entering as servants rather than equals. Over the next few days, Jake and his team worked with world leaders to analyze the treaty documents. The more they studied the details, the more concerned they became. The terms were heavily weighted in favor of the senior council species, and there seemed to be no clear path for junior members to achieve true equality. Jake realized that humanity was being offered a choice between isolation and subjugation. Neither option felt acceptable, but refusing the aliens might mean facing their advanced weapons. As he prepared for the next round of negotiations, Jake wondered if there might be a third option that the Galactic Council hadn't considered. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been suspended for 3 hours, while senior species representatives met in closed session. Jake Morrison and his team waited in their assigned quarters, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of the entire galaxy. Reports continued flooding in from junior member worlds across the galaxy. The evidence broadcast from the council chamber had triggered massive protests and demands for independence on dozens of planets. Some junior species were openly calling for the dissolution of the current council system. Dr. Amy Sullivan was monitoring communication channels when she detected unusual military transmissions. "Jake, you need to see this," she said, displaying the intercepted data on her portable screen. "The senior species are mobilizing their fleets." Commander Ryan Kelly studied the tactical information with growing concern. "These aren't defensive formations. They're preparing for offensive operations against junior member worlds." Jake realized that the senior species had made their choice. Rather than accept the exposure of their corruption and the loss of their power, they were preparing to maintain control through military force. The communication system in their quarters activated, and Commander Zephyrian's image appeared on the screen. His usual diplomatic manner had been replaced by cold authority. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's status," Zephyrian announced. "Your species has been declared a threat to galactic stability and is hereby expelled from Council territory. You have 24 hours to depart or face the consequences of continued defiance." Jake stepped forward to respond. And what about the other species that are demanding answers about your corruption? Are you planning to expel all of them too? Junior member species that continue to support rebellion against legitimate council authority will face appropriate consequences, Zephyrian replied. The council has maintained peace for millennia, and we will not allow that peace to be destroyed by chaos and sedition. You mean you won't allow your control to be threatened by truth and justice? Jake said calmly. Zephyrian's expression hardened. You have 24 hours. The communication ended abruptly. Paul Martinez had been working on their escape plan since the session ended. I've identified 3 possible routes out of the station, he reported. But none of them will work if the senior species decide to stop us by force. Jake had been thinking about their situation from a different angle. What if we don't try to escape? He said slowly. Kate Thompson looked up from her equipment preparations. You want to stay here? That sounds like suicide. Not stay here permanently, Jake explained. But what if we turn their ultimatum against them? They're expecting us to run away quietly, which would make their story about expelling dangerous humans much more believable. Dr. Sullivan understood immediately. If we refuse to leave and force them to use violence against us, it exposes their true nature to the entire galaxy. Jake nodded. More importantly, it shows other species that humans don't back down from bullies, even when those bullies have superior technology and military power. Over the next several hours, Jake's team worked with allied junior member delegates to coordinate their response. Kethvar from the Centauri Alliance and Nera 7 from the Vegan Republic had become unofficial leaders of the resistance movement. As the 24-hour deadline approached, Jake prepared to address the council one final time. Dr. Lisa Carter had confirmed that their communication array on Earth was ready to broadcast Jake's message across the entire galaxy. The main assembly chamber was heavily guarded by council security forces. When Jake and his team arrived, only senior species representatives were present, along with a few junior member delegates who had refused to join the resistance. Commander Zephyrian stood at the primary podium with an expression of grim satisfaction. The deadline has passed. The humans have refused our generous offer to depart peacefully. They will now face the consequences of their defiance. Jake walked calmly to the central podium, ignoring the weapons pointed at him by council security forces. Before you do whatever you're planning to do, the galaxy should hear humanity's final response to your ultimatum. He activated his communication device, linking directly to Earth's broadcast array. His words would reach every inhabited world in the galaxy within minutes. My name is Jake Morrison, and I speak for humanity, he began. 3 months ago, our species was invited to join the Galactic Council as junior members. We were told this was an honor and a privilege. What we discovered instead was a system built on lies, corruption, and oppression. The senior species representatives looked increasingly uncomfortable as Jake continued his speech, but they didn't interrupt him. They knew that stopping him now would only make their actions appear more tyrannical. The senior species of the Galactic Council have maintained their power by deliberately sabotaging junior member worlds, creating crises that justify permanent subjugation. They offer partnership while practicing slavery. They promise equality while enforcing caste systems. Jake paused and looked directly at Commander Zephyrian. When we exposed their crimes, they didn't deny the evidence. They didn't apologize for their actions. Instead, they threatened us with violence and demanded that we leave the galaxy. Here is humanity's response to that ultimatum. No. The simple word echoed through the chamber with surprising power. Jake continued speaking, his voice growing stronger with each sentence. We reject your corrupt system. We reject your threats. We reject the idea that advanced technology gives you the right to oppress other species. If you want us to leave, you'll have to make us leave by force, and when you do, the entire galaxy will see exactly what kind of civilization you really represent. As Jake spoke, reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Junior member worlds were broadcasting his speech in their public squares and government buildings. Some were openly declaring independence from the council, while others were demanding immediate reforms. Commander Zephyrian's patience finally broke. Enough, he shouted. Security forces arrest the humans immediately, but as the guards moved forward, something unexpected happened. Kethvar and several other junior member delegates positioned themselves between the humans and the council forces. If you want to arrest them, "You'll have to arrest all of us," Kethvar declared. More junior member representatives joined the protective circle around Jake and his team. Within minutes, nearly half the chamber was standing in defiance of the senior species authority. High Counselor Vex Thule rose from his elevated position, his massive reptilian form radiating fury. "This rebellion ends now. All rebellious delegates will be arrested and their homeworlds will face immediate military intervention." Jake smiled and activated his communication device one final time. "Dr. Carter, activate the network." Across the galaxy, a coordinated resistance plan that had been months in the making suddenly came to life. The innovative problem-solving techniques that humans had shared with junior species during their integration training were being used to disable Council military installations, liberate oppressed populations, and coordinate massive uprisings. The senior species had been so focused on controlling the immediate situation at Harmony Nexus that they had failed to notice the broader network of resistance that had been growing throughout there. Empire communication arrays on dozens of worlds began broadcasting messages of liberation and calls for unity among all oppressed species. Council military forces found themselves facing simultaneous rebellions across hundreds of systems, making coordinated response impossible. In the assembly chamber, the senior species representatives watched in horror as their millennium-old empire began collapsing around them. The careful system of control they had built through fear and manipulation was crumbling in a matter of hours. Jake looked out at the chaos in the chamber and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. "This is what happens when you underestimate humans," he said to Commander Zephyrian. "We don't just solve problems, we inspire others to solve them too." As Council security forces hesitated, uncertain whether to arrest the growing crowd of rebels or respond to the galactic crisis unfolding around them, Jake realized that the age of the Galactic Council was ending. A new era was beginning. One based on equality, justice, and cooperation, rather than oppression and exploitation. It wouldn't be easy to build this new civilization, but Jake knew that humans and their new allies were ready for the challenge. The day the Galactic Council feared a human had become the day the galaxy began to embrace freedom. Jake Morrison had come to the stars as a representative of humanity, but he was leaving as a catalyst for galactic revolution. The universe would never be the same.